Today we are going to be taking a look at some assessment stuff. We're going to be looking at the training assessment, and then I have just a first pass at like an assessment landing page, landing area, where we'll kind of house all the assessment data. We want to show you that. We do plan on making some updates to it, but want to get some initial feedback from you all so we can take that back as we continue to kind of refine that through discovery next week. And then after that, we're going to be taking a first look at a landing page for the entire IWDS 2.0 system. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. Last week when we met, I had shared, I have the local view up. I shared our thoughts and ideas and kind of a high level flow through the training assessment that we're working on, and I have since built out this other item, but I want to back way up. So I know we covered it last week. I just want to acknowledge that we did look at this, so this might seem familiar, but I do want to set some context again as we dive into this conversation. So we are exploring a training assessment. And as we've worked to discover this, we've kind of branched it out into two different kinds of training assessments. We're going to have a training assessment for our traditional training services. So that's if they're going to get their associates or bachelor's or earn a job ready credential, are those kinds of training services. So when they trigger the system by adding a aligned goal that triggers training, they would trigger our training and education assessment. We'll also have one for folks who are entering into a work experience, OJT, or transitional job, which will be a pared down version and be looking more at that OJT than like a traditional training program. We know the requirements for those are very different, so the assessments would be updated to reflect the different kind of data that we need to look at and gather and examine to determine suitability for training or OJT. As we talk about this, I want to frame up where we're at in context of the life of the program for the customer. So the customer would come in and have completed the pre-screening. They could have either done that through the self-service entry or have been invited through their IWDS profile. This pre-screening right here is working at a high level to determine potential eligibility. So it's looking at adult dislocated worker and youth tracks. It can be done by a customer or intake staff member. After they complete pre-screening, the system will check, did they trigger as potentially eligible? If they did not, they will be given some online resources they could use. They'll be told they can connect with the local office if they want to talk to somebody in person. If they do trigger potential eligibility, they then have the ability to move on to the application. That can be done by the customer themselves or with an intake staff member. The application is collecting the full set of data we need to determine eligibility. It will also collect the necessary documentation that we need. It is optional at this point to get that documentation. Eligibility certification is where it will be absolutely required to have. After they complete that application, the system is looking at who is completing it. If it's the customer, they're going to be given steps to connect with their local office for the next step. If it is a career planner, they can move forward. The system is going to look at which program track is it. And if they are a youth, it will look at does the customer trigger eligibility in the application. If they do not, it will give guidance on what is necessary to trigger eligibility. If they do trigger eligibility, they would be able to move into eligibility certification. This is where they're verifying all the documentation and then certifying the application. And then they can move into the getting started assessment and building the initial career plan. For youth, we know these could happen. It's not a linear path, so we have it set up this way. For adult dislocated workers, this is where it is a more linear path, so they have to do eligibility cert, then they would do the getting started assessment and begin building the initial career plan. And both of these paths, you can see they eventually join back together where we begin the first enrolling service after we've completed the necessary steps. When a customer has a training or education goal that we define, which we'll look at in a second, they are then would trigger to do a training or education assessment. This is done by a career planner or intake staff member. We're still working on fully defining roles, but the main thing here is that this is not something a customer is doing on their own. It is driven by the WIOA Title I staff, and they're completing this assessment. And this assessment has to be completed before they can start the actual training or OJT. It can be planned, but they can't have an actual start date until the assessment is done. So with that, I'm going to jump back over here to our flow. I do want to pause. I don't see any questions in the chat, but does anybody have any initial questions before we continue to walk through these? Okay. So the system is looking to determine which type of assessment would be needed based on goals. So we kind of listed out here of all the goals in the system. We have some here that would trigger the training and education assessment. So if they are finishing a training program, earning a credential, registered apprenticeship, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, this is going to be our training and education assessment. And I'm just going to zoom out here. So we have two routes when we're going. This top one is our training and education assessment. You can see it's a little bit bigger, and we'll take a closer look into it. That's what this arrow right here is triggering. Which training assessment is triggered? Training or education. These are the goals that we have that would trigger that. Then we have the work-based learning assessment. So that's our bottom row here. As you zoom out, it's just a little smaller. There's a few pages stripped out that we're not doing as part of this work-based learning assessment. Last week, we talked through this training and education assessment. So whenever it is triggered, the training and education assessment will trigger as required on the customer's career plan. So we'll have prompts that will alert you when that is triggered, like, hey, you have, triggered this assessment. Click here if you want to start it now. It'll also be listed as a required action on the customer's overview page and assessment page for easy access to get into it to do it. You might have done their career plan and their appointments over. So this is something you would come back and do. So it will be housed in a way that you can easily get back to it as you need to. It also will work similarly to the application and a lot of the other forms where you might only get halfway through. It'll save your progress and you can pick up at another time when you need to. And in order to have an actual start date on the training related service, at the very end of this training assessment is a question really asking are we approving to move forward with this? Yes or no. So once that's triggered, yes, then that training assessment would allow for an actual start date to be added and the customer is good to move forward with training. So I want to talk through these pages again. We did talk through them last week, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I want to give folks a chance who might have, taken some time to look at the mural I sent out or think on it to bring up any questions, concerns that they have. So our first item we're doing is your career choices and interest. So this is where we're going to be pulling in data we already know from the pre-screening and getting started assessment that they've told us about their career interests and their career preferences and choices. We will pull in we'll pull in their skills and interest survey data. And then this is where you will have the conversation and look at the day in the life pages with them and work to pick a primary occupation that the customer is wanting to move forward with. Toriana, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, before we get fully into each of these, I just want to make sure I understood what you said. So with this training assessment, did I hear you say that we'll be able to complete it or it'll be triggered prior to adding the start date? So is this something that we can do? So say if they don't start training until, 2 weeks later, but we want to go ahead and do the assessment, we'll have the availability to do that. It won't be only triggered when we try to enter a start date. Does that make sense? Or
Yes, you
okay,
are correct. So as soon
perfect.
as you add a goal related to training, this training assessment will open up for you.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
you could do that, 2 months
Mhm.
ahead of time, a week ahead of time. This will be open in advance for you to do. The only thing it is doing is it will not let you add a start date to a training service until you have done it, but you can do it in it as far in advance as you need to.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought you said, but just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. So page one, for your interest and choices. We're also going to be looking at if there are any restrictions related to the occupation that they have selected. And I did have a question. I'm going to zoom over here for you. So one of the things we want to be able to do is um, we just have some mock-ups of the pages. We're still working through these. But we want to be able to have the career planner identify like the occupation the customer selected does have some restrictions and verify that if there are restrictions that the customer is able to meet those. So we can pull in other data as well, like if they verify there are legal restrictions, then we can pull in all their legal information and prompt more questions or have an open text box where those can be explored between the customer and the career planner to make sure they're moving forward with an occupation that they are going to be suitable for after training. And we wanted to check with you all to see if you guys have any cheat sheets on how you have conversations or make determinations around potential occupation restrictions. Not sure if Rory's on the call. Somebody thought, Rory, you might have one. And we wanted to just ask the entire group if you guys have any information on um, this restrictions area.
Have a, I'm sorry, that we have like a checklist. What did you say? I'm sorry.
A checklist or a cheat sheet, or just any kind of documentation you guys might have that helps you kind of navigate having the conversations about restrictions for an occupation that need to be considered before a customer moves forward. Like you can't be a CDL driver if you have gotten 6 DUIs.
Oh, okay. We might have something like internal, but similar, not so much the restrictions, but it's kind of flips it, but I will check and see if that's been updated lately.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
have
and
one in LEA 17 for CDL that we use, and we just kind of worked with our local CDL 160 Academy to kind of create it. They like created it for us, and we kind of use it as a checklist to review. But I would definitely love if other LEAs have some of the other ones in the health, like with the health related ones, because we've had plenty of times where um, a customer had a legal background and then the career coach didn't realize it or flag it, and then they put them through a program and they're at the end of it trying to get a job, and I'm like, did you not have this conversation? So we would definitely, I think having that available to the career coaches for those that are new or are not aware of all the restrictions would be very helpful.
perfect. Yeah, if you could send me the one you have, Toriana, too, that'd be great. And
Yep.
anybody else, if you have any kind of resources like that, please send me an email with those attached. We want to take a look at those. This question, we really are have a lot of work we want to kind of focus on and see the best way to frame it and make it open-ended enough that it can be so different for a lot of these occupations. It's not really something we'll be able to have questions for every occupation, but are looking to build something open and comprehensive. Lisa, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have done, it's not necessarily restrictions, but it's more of, and in particular CDL, we have our standard operating procedures, requesting certain the court purposed driving record to make sure that they will be able to obtain employment as a truck driver because they can get their CDL license. It's a matter of obtaining the employment is the other
Right.
thing. But then one of the things that we implemented just recently is a signature from them, essentially saying that they understand about the whole over the road. It's not necessarily a requirement, but what we found with employers is that they're not going to hire individuals for local unless they have experience. And so we just had an individual that said, well, I know you talked to us about me about over the road, but I'm not doing over the road. And what ends up happening is they get their license, they then wait 6 months because they can't find employment locally, and then they become an insurance issue because employers don't want to hire them because of the whole insurance piece. So we've it's not necessarily restrictions, it's more about understanding that particular occupation and how they're even able to get into it is something that I think is also needed.
Okay.
I don't know how else to, I mean, I'm using CDL as an example. I mean, obviously, you can't sit for some of the healthcare, credentialing if you have a background. I mean, those are pretty simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
The clean driving record, obviously, but you can get your license though. It's just a matter of, can you get a job?
Do you have any like documentation or the thing that you have them sign? Would you be able to send me a copy of that?
I sure can.
Okay.
We just implemented this particular piece. I mean, we always talk about it, and it's always been in like case notes and stuff like that. But we found that talking about it, and then the all of a sudden amnesia that individuals have after the fact, we were like, no, we have you sign this. You did understand that this is what this whole occupation. So yeah, I can share that with you.
And is over the road, so after they get training, they would do, is over the road like a short-term job to give them experience? I'm not familiar with over the
So
road.
what we're talking about essentially is a lot of individuals, think CDL is, the 100%, easy training to get into and then go and get a job. But a lot of them have this understanding or thought that they're just going to drive locally. But when you have, family with, young children, and, you're not going to get that local job. You have to have that experience in going the long haul, which means, go over
Hmm.
the road,
I gotcha.
that's what, and then having that type of experience will allow for you to then be able to apply and gain that other job locally. But individuals, we talk about that at length with them, and they, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then when the push comes to shove, they say, no, I only want to do local. And then they don't find employment because those local jobs are really hard to get when you don't have experience.
Got you. And that is something we actually, it might fall into part of what we have on page 2, which is check job demands and outlooks. So, um, like what are your options for first, is it an in-demand job? We need to check that. If it's not, or is it going to be petitioned to be one? And if it is an in-demand job and we can move forward with it, um, what does your job availability look like? So locally, this is going to be the requirements versus the long haul over the road. And we switched this up. We moved the job demand before picking a training provider. And just some of the things we're kind of looking at now is like the type of employment, your preferred schedule, and your preferred job preference. Like, does this align with what the occupation is actually going to output for you and the path you might have to take? So that conversation of over the road for CDL, like you said, you want to, work close to home and you work during the days, but for CDL, you're going to be expected typically before you get local to do long haul. And so, no, it might not align with what they want, but you've had the conversation. Is that something they're still wanting to move forward with? Or do they want to look at another occupation because they're not willing to do the over the road for any period of time because of, family or whatever?
Well, and sometimes the information isn't put anywhere else other than having those conversations with our employer partners and gaining that
Hmm.
understanding of what they're looking for. So it might not necessarily be stated somewhere in the outlook or the occupations that you have to do over, you know what I'm saying? Like
Okay.
it might not necessarily say it there, but it's more about the experience and understanding based on the information that we're getting from our employer partners. So I don't know necessarily if that is going to yield where, like what you're saying right there, if that makes sense. Um, because
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be there, but we've seen it in, every single, job that a person has applied to, anecdotally. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, and I mean, this might need to be updated. Like, it's not just these resources you use, but also information that you have from your local employers on what they're looking for. Like, just knowledge that you have that it's not like online on a website somewhere.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, and if anybody else has any similar kind of documentation around just restrictions or just like out like the conversation of like, is this occupation going to align to what you're willing to commit to actually get into it? And this is kind of before we get into training, like, is this even going to be a good job for you in the end after you get training? So any resources you have on that would be great. I see Dave, David, your comment about the drug testing part. So those are kind of the three we had listed out was driving, health, legal, and health. Health was kind of like, can you pass drug tests or can you meet the like if there's any listening or vision or hearing requirement things. Um, so those are the three areas we have at a high level identified. If there are more that you guys are looking at, we definitely want to know those too. I see I have a couple of chats here. I'm going to take a quick look at these.
What about just plain experience?
Tell me a
Because
little bit more about that.
well, how it says like driving, legal, health, but sometimes I mean, you can complete a training program, but if you don't you're never going to get a job. It's kind of similar to what I was just talking about with over the
Hmm.
road. But I'm even looking even at to like project management. You can complete a project management training program, but if you don't have the number of hours that's needed to sit for the exam, it's kind of pointless. So it's more about like the experience itself.
Okay. I added that too, kind of to this section for us to look at. Yeah, and I see David, you said you have some. If you can send those too, that would be good.
Hey, Olivia, it's Mark. And first, Rory's got his hand up. I don't know if he's still got another comment or forgot to pull it down from a prior one. Let him speak if he's got something.
Oh, thanks. It's kind of everyone's been sort of answering, not answering, but probably saying the similar things I was going to say. So yeah, I did have it earlier. It was the thing we use, Olivia, that we might have mentioned before or shared with you guys before is it's not so much a restrictions per se, but it's also what positive things might you have to bring to the table for what an employer is looking for. That's half the equation too, right? It's using the LMI. We use Terminal Economics, Analytics, Jobs EQ. Some areas have Lightcast and that. So we try to do samplings of job, like real time job openings, and then pulling a list for a couple reasons. One, just to see like, hey, in this area or the area in which you're willing to commute to, um, does it look like there's a decent, steady amount of jobs that employers are looking to fill for this occupation you want to get into, you know, and are there jobs out there? But then also looking at sort of like an informal, I guess, skills gap analysis would be a fancy way to saying it, but basically,
Hmm.
a list of like, this is what employers seem to be looking for in terms of experience, education level, the certifications. This is what you have. How do we bridge that gap? Can a training program alone do that? Do you need some other, education or, communication skills, writing skills enhancements? So that's kind of a thing we might have mentioned before. And in that process, then we might say, oh, it looks like a lot of these positions are kind of to the points that were made before, are going to be driving interstate or over the road, or for even certain, you know, technical occupations, well, this one says minimum associate's degree. You already have a bachelor. So, okay, so this could be a good fit. This training could just, enhance what qualifications you already have, that you would otherwise be qualified for this position. So that's kind of what we do. And we've, used various kind of guide sheets for that. So I'll see what we're currently using, and we could always send that along. But it sounds like a lot of others in the chat here have some helpful documents. And the thing that you're showing kind of mirrors what we're doing. I think, as someone said, sort of, um, informally, like we don't like not like anyway. So in that sense, that's good. I was looking at some of the other questions that you have on that screen, and that's kind of yeah, it's kind of the flow of questions that I think a lot of us are using anyway. So it'd be nice to have it, in the system where it's all in one place.
Okay, yeah, that would be perfect if we could get some of that. Because definitely not only like what is preventing you, but what positive things do you have to help move forward would be good to highlight as well.
Yeah, and Olivia, I was going to ask, is there a place on this area of 2.0 where there could be links to various resources? Because I had mentioned in the chat, from a local perspective, the demand list is only statewide. So, that's probably predominantly dictated by what's in the northeast area of the state, but not always. But, the career planners participants should be looking, when available, at local information to see what the demand is there. So links to IDS's data on employment projections locally or in the EDR, wages local or EDR. Would it be possible to put links to that kind of stuff associated with this, like in a sidebar or something, so that they've got an easy, quick reference to go? And then whatever else, all of you use an awful lot of resources, I'm sure. If we could have a full list of where, a career planner or participant should be going to look at things, the ONET information is probably what's already going to be pulled in. So, while we can reference that, it's probably not any new information that's not already going to be attached to each occupation. But anyway, just wonder if there's a easy resource link location that people could suggest be added.
Yes, we could have like a larger list of like, here's all the resources, but we're also working on embedding them throughout the process. So, for example, when we're asking for selective service IDs, we link to the website where you can search those. And this assessment, I pulled that note somebody put in the chat that using the IDS, LW, and EDR job projections would be helpful. The help wanted online is also looking at the EBS thing. I'm not sure how familiar people are with that, but it breaks down stuff by EDR and then also links like projections by EDR and I think links to employers. So I linked this here. Like we can have multiple links, like when you're making these decisions, like here are some resources that you can use in addition to understanding from local employer information that the locals themselves have. So we can definitely continue to incorporate links so that as you're doing this work, you have easy access to those resources where you're doing them. And as additionally, we can explore like a larger master list of resources online. Um, so based on our conversation, we've really covered kind of page 1 and 2. This is where we're really focusing on their career interests and choices and looking at any kind of potential restrictions that might prevent them from moving forward after into the training or then even after the training, skills gaps, and then what are the employment prospects, the outlooks, and do those align with what the customer is looking for in a job? And then also making sure it is a demand occupation. I see David, your hand's up. I'll go with you, and then Crystal, I see you just put yours up too, so we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Olivia. I'm thinking back to our training with Jody C. Kelly on customer-centered focus, and one of the points that she reminded me of in those workshops was the need to ask the question of our customer, why are they with us? Why do they want to go into training, for example? And I just want to suggest that we always be thinking about that when it comes to this assessment template. Are we asking the question why? That she recommended that one of the tools to working with clients is to repeatedly turn back to what was their reason for coming in our door, and to making sure that we're continuing to respond to that need, and to encourage the client to continue working towards that goal.
That's a good point. And I put a sticky note here. So we have them kind of tell us about their goals and the getting started assessment. We collect some goal information at intake and then expand on it and getting started. So I can look at what that is and see if we pull this here and have something here to kind of re-highlight those goals, continue that motivation of where, we need to do all this stuff because we want to help you get to here and do these things that they had previously outlined for us.
Yeah, I think the mistake that we've even made here in our office is we write down their goal, say they want to be a truck driver, an LPN, whatever, but we don't capture the why. And her argument was a good one, in that you need to understand, well, what's the logic behind that goal? We tend to be thinking about the facts, the training facts, what training program are they going into? But it's the why that's critical for customer-centered focus.
Okay. Crystal?
To kind of go along with that, or well, I guess beside that comment, on the first part of the page one, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, because it looks like the assessment process that everybody has been used to using across the state is getting pulled into pieces and stuck in different places. And I'm just wondering, when it says that it pulls in data on career interest in the pre-screening and the interest survey, I don't recall seeing like is that where something like the interest surveys on workNet are going to be pulled? Are they going to be part of the pre-screening, or
They are part of the getting started assessment. So at the end of the application, if the customer does it themselves, we say, hey, your next step is to meet with your local office, all that stuff. And then we say, here's some things you can do in the meantime. And we prompt them to complete the getting started assessment through their Illinois WorkNet account, and it will save those results. So then when they get to the we prompt them to do the skills and interest survey through their WorkNet account.
Okay.
And it's after the application, because we don't want to do it in the middle of pre-screening and have them go away and get lost. So after they've done all that they can do on their own, we prompt them to do that. If they do it with a career planner, we'll send them an email after it's finished that, hey, you could do this getting skills and interest survey. And it will save those results to their WorkNet account. As a career planner, one of the next assessments you're going to do with them is after completing the application is the getting started assessment. So we do the application down here. We need to certify eligibility, and then we do the getting started assessment. We're going to show you guys this here very soon. We are working on upgrading it's not what I want. We're working on upgrading that skills and interest survey. It looks really good. It's very cool. But as part of the getting started assessment,
So I think what I was getting while you're looking for that, what I was getting at is most places across the state probably every place, is used to doing all of your assessment work prior to application and certification. So you have an idea what the interests are. You're doing all of the talking about the path before they ever got to the enrolling service or the eligibility certification stuff, right? So since we're taking that apart and we're pulling it different directions, I just wanted to know, like, is the part where you're talking about their interests and all of the stuff that you would normally be doing prior to a training plan to get an idea of what they're doing, is that all going to be moved into the getting started thing? And then this training assessment, quote unquote, training assessment or work employment assessment has other pieces that we're not used to using, or like additional stuff that we need to know? I'm trying to understand and wrap my brain around it so that I can communicate effectively to career planners. Because I mean, well, let's just face it, it's a huge shift and everybody's going to freak out. So I just like to know the stuff that we're used to using to help someone develop a current IEP or ISS that's going to be the career plan. If we're pulling it apart, where are the pieces that we are used to using going to land?
Yes, so the getting started assessment, the skills and interest survey, that is now in the middle of the getting started assessment. So this is our getting started assessment, all the pages. We didn't really talk about, I had skipped this because we're building this page right now. We're going to show you guys this. This was the skill, essentially embedding an upgraded skills and interest survey. And we have that done. It's looking very nice. But that'll be part of the getting started assessment. So when you get to the training assessment, it is going to, you're already going to have done it and seen the results, but it's going to pull them back in here for you to see as well if you need to rehab that conversation at all. So if they'd already selected some occupations they're interested in through the previous getting started assessment or pre-screening, it's going to show you all like, hey, they've already said this is what they're interested in. This is their primary. They said maybe these is secondary, or maybe they just have already picked their primary. We'll show that plus the results. So these are kind of the results we'd get back from the getting started assessment. Here's their top matches. But on this training assessment, it's going to ensure that we're confirming this is the occupation they've selected that they're wanting to get into, and that's why we're moving forward with training under this occupation. We're going to auto-populate all this data where we can. Like if we already know it, we're passing it through here so you have it for review and conversation and making that final determination on the job the customer has chosen. If you already have that primary occupation embedded into the goal, so when you're picking a goal, you can pick different pieces of information. If we already know it, we'll pre-populate as much here as we can, and it'll be more of a confirm thing that yes, they're still wanting to move forward with their CDL. That hasn't changed.
Okay, because that's the part that I was a little confused about, because what we have been doing is doing the interest and the skills and all of that as part of the assessment before eligibility and certification, and then that information informs the career plan that you put together. So I was trying to figure out, well, at what point is the career plan in this process? Because I thought you said that you've already developed the career plan before you get to the.
Yeah, so we're doing the getting started assessment where we do the initial skills and interest, and then we do the career plan. So it's still informing the career plan.
Okay.
It's just as the assessments are now coming after. So assessing a customer to this level is an enrolling service. So it is now coming, well, for adult dislocated worker. It is now in this process after we have certified eligibility, done in intake, which is pre-screen app, and certified eligibility. Then we do this initial comprehensive getting started assessment. That's we're not calling it initial and comprehensive. We're moving away from that terminology, but essentially that is what the getting started assessment is doing.
Okay. All right. Because I think that's it still confuses me because it's such a gigantic shift. And I know that that is a question we're going to encounter from every career planner, and they're going to be concerned about that part.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding what is happening and when the sequence of events and the things that we're used to using, where they are going to appear in this process now.
Yeah, and I know last week you shared some concerns too about just like terminology and the shift,
Yeah.
and we did talk to the training team too. So like there's policy reasons for some of these decisions. So one, we want to make sure we're explaining these new terminologies, but two, we want to highlight like the policy behind
Yes.
why some of this is happening. So the Teagles that are saying you cannot ask unnecessary questions when determining eligibility, it has to be focused on eligibility. And that's why some of these things are shifting. It might help the mindset of all the change management that's going to be
Right.
happening here too. So we've
Right.
been conveying that back to the training team. We meet with them on Monday. So I usually take what you guys present to me on Thursday, gather that. Kelly Trimble is on the call too, my colleague. She's really leading a lot of that training. So she's taking notes too, and we're making sure to convey that back. So as we build the training, we're making sure to like elevate some of these things as that training unfolds.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Toriana?
Yeah, so I have a question. I know I see the eligibility certification, and that's at the point where the career planner must do that. They have to complete
Mm-hmm.
it. So, at what point would the career planner have had a conversation with that individual? For example, we get a lot of people that come to us and they want to go to a certain training or they want to do something, but then they're not, maybe that training's not available, or they have to go through a lot of different steps to get into that training program. So where in the process where would those conversations be able to take place prior to eligibility certification? Is that during the pre-assessment part? But if they're able to complete that themselves, like how does that
Yeah.
like where's that happening? Is that at the application? Like
So
what's
a
the vision?
customer, the
Mhm.
way this flow works, a customer could get all the way through the end of the application and uploading documentation without stepping foot into a local office.
Right.
So pre-screening is the soonest required step for the customer to come in. I'm sorry, not pre-screening. Certification is the first step in which a customer has to go in and meet with the local office. So to your question, eligibility certification is the soonest place that would be forced to happen. And customers could come in, and have that conversation before even starting the pre-screening,
Right.
and be like, I don't know if this is for me. Have that conversation, be like, okay, I want to do this, and you'd be like, cool, scan this QR code, and you can start the pre-screening, or let me email you a link, and like they could have a 2.0 account, and you can go in and just trigger to email them the pre-screening link with the instructions and pre-screening. So it's not here's the one way it can happen. There's going to be multiple routes in which customers can engage in this process to meet them where they're at. But I understand what you're
Okay.
saying. Like they could get all the way through this. And that's why we try to, in the introduction pages of the pre-screening and application, make it clear that this is helping to determine the types of services that would be available to them. By doing this, it is not a guarantee that they're going to walk in the door and get training as a nurse just because that's what they want to do.
Right. And so that's where I think David's kind of getting to where in the chat where I'm kind of getting. So they do all of that. They get to the eligibility certification. We're meeting with them. And then in order for us to determine or have the conversations about the training and look at their, I mean, at this point, their interest and if, fit and have those conversations, that's usually, again, happening at the eligibility part. But what you're saying is now that's happening after, so what conversations are we having there? One, then if they're interested in something that we don't offer or we can't fund, whatever the case may be, they're at the point of being eligible and we've gone through an assessment with them, and that's a service, right, for adults and dislocated workers. And so if it's then determined that they're not going to move forward, what does that look like performance wise and for our metrics there? Does that make sense?
Well, And I'll step in because it kind of relates to David's comments. I think, you've always got to keep in mind what prompts enrollment. And when we start spending, when I say we, our system, all of you primarily, start spending time and money to go beyond what is pre-enrolling services, then you have to be cognizant that that prompts enrollment. And, we shouldn't, I don't think, be in the preconceived notion everyone that walks to our door automatically wants training. And if they don't want training, then why would we enroll them? Because there are many services those individuals could receive, especially if they can't afford training. So if they come to us and the thought is, yeah, hey, I heard these people are going to pay for my training, but in fact, they're not suitable for training, there's still an obligation to serve them with the services we have outside of training to try and help them get a job, whether that be a referral only because they need adult education first, or truly need to learn how to do a good job search, need to learn how to write a good resume, need to learn whatever it is, even just selecting an occupation that doesn't require the level of training that they're not suitable for, and identifying the occupations that they're suitable for without training. So, I mean, I understand the difficulty in and fear from a performance standpoint of enrolling someone that may not succeed in training, but maybe they don't need the training. Maybe that's not their best option. And if they don't go into training, you don't have to worry about the two training measures and those outcomes because they haven't been enrolled. You would only, you would still have to worry about the employment. But again, that's what our services are for, right? To help them get employed.
Right. Yep. I understand that. I
Yeah.
guess, and I do understand the employment piece, and we enroll people for employment. But a lot of times we just do get people that are looking for training. And once those conversations are had and it's kind of determined that they're not able to move forward with that at this time, they often disengage from some of those other employment services. So we just kind of need to figure out a way, I guess, locally or probably statewide to still get people to engage in some of the other services that we offer, because they most of the time they're really looking for that training and they don't see the value or the benefit in some of the other services. But I'm sure that's something that we would need to kind of focus on and figure out how we can train our career coaches to help people see the value in
I'll,
some of those other career services. Yeah.
yeah,
I think
I'll
that's
answer Dave's other comment, but I want Paul and you, Olivia, to respond. But I'll always preface, please, if I don't say it publicly, most of you that have worked with me a lot, especially in work groups, I always preface, I've never been in your shoes, folks. So, take my thoughts as my thoughts only. It's not a system wide necessarily or an OET perspective. I'm just interpreting what our system is for when I respond in this way. So accept my apologies if you disagree. I'd love to talk about it. So I can learn from your perspective, and I do understand that there may be a slight difference of thinking coming from a state level. But again, my thoughts come without the experience that all of you have had for so many years, and I appreciate learning from you all every day.
But the disengagement is real. And I think it boils down also to the expectations from the very get-go with marketing and about WIOA.
Hmm.
For the longest time, everybody seems to think that it is a training program, and it is not. It's an employment program. And we can train our career advisors every single solitary day about how to implement all these other employment services, but if the customer will not engage unless they get the training, because that's what their expectation is from the onset because of the way that it's been marketed, that's the problem.
Yeah, I see. Got lots of thumbs up on that, Lisa and Mark. Paul, I see you have your hand up. And then I just wanted to note, Rory, I think you put in the chat the steps to clarify. You were almost spot on. I just added the application and it's in there right after pre-screening. I re-put that in the chat if you want to take a look at it. But that is the steps. And we have this in the flow I sent out to you guys too. Oh, I'm on the wrong assessment. So you guys can also always refer kind of back to that on like what are the steps. I tried to make these boxes like a brighter blue because these are kind of like the bigger steps. These are more the seasons the system is looking at to know which way to push. And then go ahead, Paul, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of trying to get my head around because right this moment, after the certification, right, for the certification part, and far as the assessments go, if in 2.0 we're saying, the getting started assessment triggers enrollment, that works a little, I mean, that works a little different for adult and dislocated than youth, right? Because
Right,
youth, it won't trigger.
correct.
So where is that reflected on the flow? Flow.
Yeah, so for make him do this. So for adult, you're right. This step triggers their first enrolling service. And it'll be done like behind the scenes. We're not going to expect you to do the assessment and go out of service that says you did the assessment. Um, then we'll build the career plan and begin other enrolling services. For youth, they won't trigger enrollment until they start their first actual
Okay.
enrolling youth service.
Okay. And then for adult and dislocated worker, so if the you had your step up there, but getting started assessment triggers. So like right now in our office, we have a session where they come in and they do all the assessments that they're going to need in order for the career planner to meet with them and to go over, right? So everything from CASAS, reading and math assessments, to doing the BSST forms, to any other assessments, interest surveys, things like that, assessments prior to, we and then we get all of that information and then finish processing the application and provide it in the current IWDS, provide it to the career planner who then determines eligibility and starts working on their career plan. But what you're saying is in this process, if we were to do the CASAS testing prior to um, eligibility certification, we can't do that. We have to do it after they're certified and then do it.
No, the application will prompt the CASAS testing if it's necessary. So we have learned that TABE and CASAS testing is being way overdone. Tons of customers are getting those tests that should not be getting those tests. So for youth, if they don't meet any other eligibility requirements, we will optionally present, would this person be potentially eligible as basic skills deficient because of some kind of CASAS or TABE testing? Do we think that needs to be explored? And if yes, then we can add the TABE and CASAS results to prove that as eligibility in the application. Same for priority of service for our adults. If they don't meet priority of service any other way, we'll say, do you think that they would under basic skills deficient, which would require a TABE or CASAS to prove that? If yes, then you could add that TABE or CASAS as part of the application. There's no reason to TABE or CASAS them at this point for any other reason. Then when we get to the training assessment, we will have check math or reading requirements. And the first thing we do is, do they meet an exemption that would not require a TABE or CASAS? If yes, then upload the documentation to support that exemption. If no, then go ahead and TABE or CASAS them to make sure we're meeting those reading and math requirements. Other than that, we should not be giving a customer a TABE or a CASAS test.
So even if we know up front that they want a particular training that they want to go into, we would not necessarily process test them.
If you know up front that they need one and you verified that they don't meet any of the exemptions, you'll do that as part of getting all their training assessment done.
Okay, so there'll be a way to do that.
Yeah, and we're
In
gonna
the
have a
system,
way,
it'll let us do it.
and yeah, we'll have a way in the system too. We'll look at these. We're gonna have assessments. The placement of this is totally, we're still working through where does this assessment page live. And the UI here looks very boxy. This is a mock-up tool that I can just pull standard elements together. It will match the whole modern look and feel of IWDS 2.0. So please bear both of those things in mind when looking at this. But we'll have a space where we can add assessment results for the customer, including TABE and CASAS. If they happen to have those results, you can input them in. But one of the things the system is really working to do is make sure that not everybody and their moms are adding TABE and CASAS tests for every customer that walks through the door, because it's not necessary. There's other things we can be doing or checking to get to streamline the process for the customer too. But we will have space where you can go in and add those when they're appropriate, and we'll prompt for them when we need them when it's appropriate. I'm not sure if, okay, I see you went back on mute. Lisa, you have your hand up.
I'm going to apologize if this is a question that has already been answered. I have been unable to attend a few of these sessions, so forgive my ignorance. But when it comes to the whole interest and all of those pieces, when it comes to the occupational review, are we requiring individuals to continue to do that even if they're upgrading their skills in the occupation that they want to stay in?
I don't know that I know the answer to that. So if they're
like if they're in IT, I'll use IT. IT is always is definitely something. You're in IT, you lose your job, you want to remain in IT, but you cannot obtain it until you can't get another job without adding those extra letters on the back of it because all the jobs are requiring blah blah blah. Do you still have to do these interests to say, oh yeah, I want to stay in IT? Or is that just redundant and just work on the customer at that point? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So they know their
They're already in the
occupation,
field. They're already in it.
but then we could still, so there's no restrictions for that. The skills gap is they just need those extra they're exactly kind of what you said. They need all these things to be able to stay in that field, and this training is going to get them there. It is a demand occupation. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. It is a demand occupation. This employment outlook prospect, you're saying, might not be super applicable, like making sure that they're comfortable with the wages and the work stuff. Like they already know all that.
They already know it all. I mean, they're saying it's just an upgrade their skill sets in order for them to be able to obtain employment. I mean, this happens even in, we have, I'll use another example. I mean, that's upgrade, but we also have customers that are going through their LPN already. And they are coming to us to assist them in their final pieces of that LPN training cost. Why have them go through like the occupational search information, all of that piece, when they already know that they want to be an LPN because they're already invested.
Yeah. I'm gonna take that back to the state because I wonder there's some things we could do there, and I wanna get some feedback there on, is there a way we say like we can flag that they're like upgrading or finishing an existing training program they've already started in,
Right.
Or what that looks like. But I have a note for that to kind of talk through that.
Okay.
Mark, you have your hand up.
Thank you.
I mean, it can possibly wait till that discussion, but I was just going to say, I think the due diligence is always to make sure they understand. Because it's one thing to be in a job and say, I always want to go higher and bigger in my job. But if you don't fully understand what that means, and you as a career planner getting ready to commit WIOA funds, should make sure they're clear about that and make sure they understand all the aspects of it. And that may be a very, very short conversation because they are in the field and they can come in and they can explain to you why this is a good fit for them. But to take them at face, just initial word without
It,
checking to make sure they understand that, I
it's
think would,
never just it's never just at their word. There is a conversation, but to make
yeah.
them go through um, steps that, in my opinion, is just checking a box.
Right, right. I think that's where I don't know if the system, if that's a change in how the system was originally designed to have that path for upskilling. And to be honest with you, when upskilling the word came up, I think you were part of it. This team, Olivia. One thing we've talked about very shortly, but in the past is we don't use the word upskilling all that often. And in reality, probably many of the people that come into our offices are upskilling more than they're just getting new training. People have
100%.
some
I
skills.
agree.
So upskilling is a different there. And when we complete that, the reason I say I think Olivia had been part of this, because I think we've asked that upskilling is its own checkbox versus, um, other training because
Yeah.
we don't really capture it as upskilling right now. When we look at our data, we have almost nothing identified as upskilling when in fact a lot of it is upskilling. So for better reporting purposes, we're going to make that clear what the differences are, and hopefully we start seeing more people check upskilling as their type of training.
Um, we are getting short on time here, so I want to we have to get this work reviewed and wrapped up soon. So I'm gonna jump ahead here. So we have our reading and math check, which I actually just talked about this one. This is where we're looking at, like, do they have exemptions? If they do, we need to upload documents. If they don't, they have to upload these appropriate results for math and reading tests. Then these next pages here, we're really getting into, we're taking information we already know regarding like their transportation or their childcare needs or their income needs and saying like, here's what we know. We need to make sure we have a plan around this that will support them in being successful for training. So I have a example here. So for example, like the customer said that they are going to use their car, how the customer plans to get worker training. We'll auto-populate whatever they say. They're going to use their car and they have a valid driver's license, or oh no, they have a restricted driver's license. They concerns they have about using their car. They have a car, but they don't have car insurance. So we need to flag these things here that could cause issues with them being able to get back and forth to training. So this will be dynamic. It will be based on the information they've already provided. So if they're not using public transportation, we're not going to show the concerns about public transportation here. But this section is going to pull in all of the pre-screen data that we have to have that conversation. They've also told us how far they're willing to travel for work or training. And then we know based on the training program they pick how far it actually is. And we can say, hey, like in this situation, we are outside of what the customer said they're willing to travel. Are they okay with that? Yes, they want to move forward. This one's like 1.3 miles further. If it was 50 miles, they might be like, heck no, I can somehow that got overlooked. No, we're not willing to do that. We need to pick a different training program. Or maybe it is within distance, and then we're not gonna, confirm the wanting to move forward. But that's what these pages are going to look at doing, is pulling forward information we already know and cross-checking it with the training program information that we have and make sure that it's going to be suitable for the customer. Then we have the understanding training cost and financial aid. So that's where we're going to be pulling a lot of information from the training program so that the customer can kind of understand that, and we'll have conversations around what we can cover and what we can't cover. and then it's just the final summary and training program approval. I'm going to copy and paste this updated flow along with this flow down here in this training assessment, and Kelly will resend this out and we'll get it posted on the resource page. I need you guys between now and next Thursday to go in and review this, and you can add comments. So you'll see here, Kelly Lapatino has been in, and she's adding comments to things she wants to make sure are happening here, has questions on. And then we can review those and work to finalize kind of this view next week. This one down here, I'm going to spend just a few more minutes to talk through the work-based learning, is we have their career choices and interests again. So this one, they're going into some kind of OJT, work-based learning, transitional job. So we need to make sure that the occupation, end goal occupation they're working for is going to work for that customer. Very same thing that we're doing with job training, occupation stuff is happening here too. This page will be the same or almost the same. There might be a few modifications. And I put right here, if a customer happens to trigger both, this data is going to be shared and pulled from other assessments. So it's not going to be things we're re-entering. We're going to just be confirming at this point. If they've already done the training assessment, we would pull in all the results they've already answered and just be confirming it there. Where it gets different is the employer training options. So we don't have like an ETPL statewide that we can pull from. This is kind of more of a local thing. So we're going to be looking at like the type of work-based learning that would be best for them. I'm going to kind of update some of these questions, would short-term work experience help you build skills, learn workplace habits? Which type of like what is the customer looking to do in a more customer-centered, plain language way so that we can make sure we're fitting them with what it is they're looking to do or needing to do. And then it's more of a career planner prompt to explain the work-based learning the customer will participate in, like which one they're selecting to move forward with, to kind of start having those comparisons too. And will it bridge making sure it's going to bridge the gaps that we've identified. And then these 3 pages here, the transportation, family support, and budget income, are going to be almost identical to what we see up here, where we're pulling in information we know. The big difference here is we're not going to have them do a budget worksheet when they're doing the work experience one. And then we move into the summary and approval. So we're stripping out things like we don't need to worry about assessments with work-based learning. So we don't have our math and reading assessment page. There's also no understanding training costs with the OJT or work experience. We will still talk about income, but we're not going to like break down. There's the training cost stuff. So we have this flow laid out here as well, and you'll all have access to be able to click and add comments to things that you need to add comments to. You can right click and click to add a comment, and it'll let you add that in so that we can see those, and I can get prepared to drive the rest of this conversation next week to answer any questions you guys have on what we have mapped out so far. The other thing I want to get some initial feedback on, and I'm not sure that we'll have time for the landing page, but we'll see where we get, is I want to get your feedback on, like an assessments page where we would kind of house all the assessment results. So I want to make sure everybody is aware that we still have a couple of really important things that we'll be doing. Let me pull this over here real quick. I have some notes I want to pull. So just because we have an assessments page where the assessments are going to kind of be housed so that we can get back to them at any time or come back and see like all of our assessment results or all the things that have been pulled in from their Illinois WorkNet profile if they've done on their own, does not mean that we're moving away from streamlining the process. Our goal is still to reduce the amount of manual review required by the career planners. And the assessments page is more to have a place where everything is housed for completeness and record keeping. we are still going to use the assessments and intake data to make actionable recommendations. So one of the tasks that our other BA, Laura, is working on is as they're answering pre-screening and assessment and the getting started assessment, we might flag, hey, they said they have this going on. We're going to recommend this service or this goal. We're going to recommend these things based on how they're answering that. So we're going to have a recommendation page within the career plan where we list all the things that have been recommended with a quick add or decline button for the career planners to use to help build that career plan. We're not requiring that they then go back through after completing the assessment to say, okay, now I need to build the career plan. I need to open up this getting started assessment and like look at all these data points to see which services I need. We are going to continue to push through that data to the next step. Similar to what we just looked at in the getting started assessment, we're going to continue to be able to pull in, like previously they've said all this information. We're not going to say, oh, you need to go look back at their intake to see what they said for this kind of information. It will continue to be pulled forward. Additionally, we're going to prompt that. So like at the end of eligibility certification, whenever you complete that eligibility certification, where are we at here? So you enter in an eligibility certification date. It's kind of the last step in the multi-step eligibility certification process, and click certify application. When you do that, we can have a pop-up display that says the customer's application is now certified. Your next step is to complete the getting started assessment. You can do so here, and a link to like go right there and do it. And if you have time to do that during the appointment, wonderful. If not, you don't have to click that link and move forward. You log out of the customer, log out, whatever. Customer comes back a week later, and you can get back to that through the customer's profile a variety of ways. One would be if you come to their housing or their assessment landing page, it's kind of showing you all the required steps specific to assessments here. We're also going to build an overview page, which we have another BA working on as well, which will house at a high level. So we're going to have like a landing page for you all when you log into IWDS. It's a landing page for all customer related things. But then within each customer, we're going to have an overview page, which is going to be like a high level overview of all the things going on with the customer, including what their next steps are, things that need to be done, action items. So you'll also be able to have a way to access it from the overview page if you're kind of working more from that checklist area. So I wanted to kind of preface that because we have like an assessments landing page where we house all things assessments regarding your ability to see what you need to do and add additional assessment results that you might be doing on your own and view historical assessments, does not mean we're going to be losing some of our intuitive process-driven flow. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what you think from a local level would be helpful to have on like an assessments landing page for you guys to do your day-to-day work. The way we have it broken up now is a section where it's just, here's the required assessments you need to complete. Like the getting started assessment is necessary. You can see like this one is just an example. It's 30% of the way done. This training and education assessment would only show when it's triggered. So once you trigger it, it would pop up here to say, hey, you have one you need done. When you trigger it, we'll also alert you in the system that, hey, by adding this goal, you're now required to do the training and education assessment before you start the training service. So this section is just showing you what you have to have done. If there's none open, it'll say that there's no required assessments that need completed at this time. Then we have the workNet assessment. So this is where you can view results of things they've done in workNet, or you can email a link to the customer to do it if they haven't done it, or complete it now with the customer in the event it's something you need to do with them. These will only be applicable on the ones that are customer specific. So we won't send customer worksite evaluations to do. Those would be sent to employers. And then at the very bottom is just a table of completed assessments. I do have gotten some feedback on this. I think we want to break this up to and kind of group things similar to here. So we could have like training assessments, and this is where we would you could expand it similar to there's some stuff in entity management where there's a row for an entity with a little chevron, and when you open that chevron, it has sub rows of the locations. So here we could have, like, instead of the entity, it would be the assessment grouping, like training assessments. And when you open the chevron, you could see things like the TABE and CASAS type of results. You could see the training and education assessment, or maybe the work-based learning assessment if those have been completed. So they're grouped together a little bit more when you're working to review those results. So we're still want to kind of work on some of this UI, but we want to, as we continue to do that, get a little feedback from you all on what would be helpful to have on a space that kind of houses, like, if you need to see all your assessment stuff, you would come here, and this is what would you like to see on this page? CIS assessment. Is that the career and interest survey? So we'll have that right here. Right now, WorkNet uses a CIS skills and interest survey, but we're rebuilding that. So it's the same survey, but it's housed in WorkNet. So we can actually take the data and build more questions off of it and pull it in. So we will have that career and interest survey as well. And if they'd done it, their results would pull here. If they hadn't, you could send it to them or complete with them. It'll be the same one that's embedded in the getting started assessment. I saw, Paul, you had your hand up. I thought somebody had their hand up.
Just answered it. Yeah.
Okay.
You just answered it for the skills and interests. So if once they start the getting started assessment, part of it can be the CIS in Illinois WorkNet, and then like the labor market information, the wages, the job growth, all that information would be displayed in that skills and interests.
You're talking about the job, like the occupation information for the job they pick, like what are the wages? Yes. And yes. So and we'll show you more of that too. We have we're building that, but they will link to the results of those will look similar to this. Where it'll tell you like your top 3 areas. Here are your matching careers. And when you click the view career details, that will take you to the occupation profile for that houses all that information. Let me see. Make this bigger. So yeah, we'll be able to display all that kind of the projections, all that kind of the wage information. And we're looking at having this filter down. I think this is like nationwide, and we're looking at the ability to filter it down to the Illinois data as we work through being able to link to all that information. And the customer will have access to all of this on their end. And then we're also mapping, instead of these tags here, we're going to map them to the Illinois DOTL, demand occupation training list. So it'll show the in demand, moderate demand, not in demand. So we'll have that visibility and cross mapping to the career outputs as well.
Okay, just a quick follow-up question to that. So it's linked, right? So like right now we have to have, and you may not have an answer for this, but right now we have to have physical files where we have documentation showing that it's a, like in-demand occupation for our area, right? When we approve trainings. So if it's going to be linked here, do we need to have it in their file to verify that? And second,
go ahead.
Yeah, and then secondly, if we do not need to have it in their file because it's linked, the data for this CIS stuff that gets updated like every, I don't know, 10 years, whatever it is, right? So whatever we initially did today, will that be stagnant or will it show new and updated information for that occupation that they were researching in order to get training approval like 2 years from now? When the monitors go in and they're going to review and they go into the assessment page and they say, oh, this is the occupation that they wanted, but the occupation 2 years, the data 2 years from now may be different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm gonna answer your last question first because it's easier. It will hold. So like what it was when they did it, it will display demand data and it will save that way. So if it changes in 2 years, we're holding what it was when you did the assessment.
Okay, perfect.
The first question you asked, will documentation be required? I don't know the answer to that for sure. My initial thought is no. The point of connecting this is that we can see the demand, pull it directly from the state's demand occupation list and store that data as the verification. That's what this is working to do and automate, because we can map and know all of that. So I don't think they would then ask that you copy something from, like, go find the doodle and all the other stuff to prove it and then upload it. But we still need to have that conversation. We were actually just talking about the demand occupation stuff with our technical team this morning. And as we're working to incorporate that into the system and show what those outputs are, making sure that's going to meet the state and monitoring needs for what would be saved with the training assessment for validating that.
Okay. I was talking more the physical file because like right now we have to have a physical file with everything in it. So
yeah, this should replace that.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
I need to look at the chat. Yes, so on the training assessment, we do have as part of this, we'll ask if they have applied for FAFSA, and if yes, we'll ask what types they have received. And we can include if they've applied for FAFSA, and then as part of what types they've received, we can say like, were you approved or like denied or whatever, and if they were approved, what types they received, so we can capture that kind of information. So Dave, if you like the current application in IWDS where we can go and find what we need. Yeah, so we'll also have like a historical view and the ability to add new assessments. It'll be a little more modern than what is in current IWDS in those areas, and we're going to try to break it down so it's easier to digest. One of the newer features is that we're helping to make recommendations on like presenting what assessments need to be done instead of leaving that to the career planner to just know through process that something needs done next. So we want to be able to highlight that. Could you tell a little bit more about, you say, and I see some thumbs up here, so I like the application menu in IWDS. I know where to go to find what I need. Hopefully the new look will also help us find what we need. Can you tell me a little bit more about you can find what you need?
Well, for an example, I had a case yesterday where I was working with a career planner and we wanted to know, was this a single parent? And if so, how many kids she had and how old were they? Were they in daycare or already in school? Being able to get to that quickly is easy in IWDS 1.0 because it's right on the application menu.
Okay. So being able to know where you go to quickly find data on the customer as it's broken out in different places. So that's definitely something we'll make sure that we're providing visibility on and ease of use on so you can find that kind of information.
Yeah, once they're enrolled, it's unusual, in my opinion, to review any of the assessment materials.
Mhm.
You may want to look back and remind yourself, with youth, for example, when they drop out of high school or they quit their GED, I frequently want to know, well, what was their reading and math level like, particularly if they dropped out of high school. If I see that their math was second grade, we know the GED wouldn't make a lot of sense there because they're probably never going to pass it.
Perfect. Any other comments here on how this is like having an assessment page, how you guys are using it in the field so we can make sure that we're building it to support you all? Or do you guys agree with, David, it's more that you need to be able to use it for historical purposes to go back and check some of these things as one-offs?
Yeah,
I think it's helpful because like right now when we do internal monitoring, that application menu page comes in very handy because we're going in there and checking every single eligibility data, every single document, list enrolled services, and all that kind of stuff. So a quick access, like right now when we go to a participant's landing page or a customer's application landing page, you can just quickly get to all of those different sections where you put in data. So I agree with Dave. If there was something like that where we'd be able to see it, that'd be great.
yeah, it's one of those, it doesn't have to look exactly the same as it does now. Oh, there are some things in IWDS legacy that did kind of hold up, that still work. It doesn't have to look exactly the same, but as long as it's intuitive. And that, I mean, I think from the trainer sessions on Tuesday, that's been kind of sort of alluded to is one of the um, one of the things that we have to prep for, kind of not concern, but, just something that we're gonna have to, prepare for. And that once we get used to it, but hopefully it'll be a short learning curve to get used to it, so the design, the layout will be different, of course, but yeah, just get knowing then where to go to quickly access it, like where are these things, as long as it's intuitive. That's always kind of the challenge.
Well, I think to go along with what everybody else is saying, everybody knows IWDS 1.0 has its limitations, but one thing that they did get right was to do the application menu the way that it is. Because I can tell you from an internal monitoring as well as a performance standpoint or approving exits before they're done, that kind of thing, I'm in and out of all the pieces of the application menu all the time before we exit anybody. I'm in and out of it constantly. So
Okay.
having it from reporting and for performance management and that kind of thing, when you get to the end of a file, having it all there, being able to easily go in and out of the case notes, be able to easily go in and out of pieces of the application menu to make sure that everything's there that's supposed to be, that everything got checked the way it was supposed to be, to sort of lessen the number of monitoring findings is essential. And the way that they had it laid out makes a lot of sense. You may have to once you get into it and you're like, it has so much information. Once you get into the other screens, sure, there plenty of improvements could be made, but the actual layout of it and how it works really well.
Okay.
Yeah, I also had to shine on that one too, because I do agree that the old system, you know how to get to everything. Everything is right there, from the case management, from the grant, from the entity, from the performance. And hopefully this new system make it easy for us to jump into from a case management aspect into these different roles to see what's going on, because a lot of this stuff is tied to customers as well from a performance standpoint, the grant that they are using to pay for the Viola fund or whatever grant we may be using it for. So it's very important to make sure this thing have that capability. Don't don't look at the old IWDS as a system that wasn't good. It was good because it knew how to point us to the information. Now, did it needed some update? Oh yes, it needed a lot of update, especially with the reporting aspect of everything, getting what the local areas need, precise cohorts report to really know numbers and stuff, because sometimes we got to take 3, 4 different reports to make one, and we want to be able to have clear, precise report to show to our boards to see what we doing in a whole for our local area. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Okay. And I'm monitoring the chat too. I see things coming in. Agreed. So Alyssa, when you say the current reporting system, are you talking about the reports or the like flow of application career planning and outcome?
Are you talking to me about reports?
Allison.
Okay.
I know we're out over time by a minute now, so she might have had to jump too.
Don't worry about the time. We
Okay.
we kind of like this thing, and sometimes it is going to go over because we want to make sure
Yeah.
you get all the information you need to get this thing together for next week meeting.
Olivia, were you asking me a question?
No, Allison, you said you agreed with David. IWDS 2 or 1.0 menu is good. And that you said the current reporting system being used for CJJ TED, you said it's not very user friendly, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that. Oh, I see you're putting it the piece where to find the pieces of the application. Got you. So as you guys are talking, I'm wondering if we can kind of um, make our application right, like embed it similar to like what we have here. So instead of links, like they would be like what we have in IWDS. Oops, that's not what I want. So here, this is what you guys are talking about. So instead of having the like link you have to click in and it opens to a new page, it would be like all the application pages set here. And when you click these, it just opens. And then we could have that part of the application data right here for you guys to view. And it could be considered like a I know it's not per se like an assessment, but you are assessing their eligibility. So I think we could have it here as a quick way for you guys to easily get back to those pre-screening assessment stuff if you want to go back and recheck things that were answered in those areas. To have it all kind of in one place and easily accessible and kind of broken down. So as you're answering the application, there's pages on um, different things that you might want to go into, like specific to their education or the basic skills screening results. We do have that one pulled out as like we're going to populate it as its own, but maybe we look at just continuing to keep it embedded in the application and pull that in. So I do think there's ways that we can do that, and we can make it a little more user friendly than what you are seeing in the other systems, while still maintaining the kind of newer look and feel of 2.0, where we don't want just like a bunch of links, but we still want to be able to get to those sections. I did want to answer Sandy, if you're still on, I'll answer your question. We're going to require things to be uploaded into the system. So we're going to have an upload section where all the documentation that is uploaded for a customer will be in one space. We're still working on like who's going to have access to view all those documents and everything. But there will still be that compliance piece, and we do have SMEs from the State monitoring team working with us on making sure that all of that is squared away so that things can be monitored from a state and local level. And as we're working through the do it requirements on documentation, aligning that policy so we understand paper hard copies versus what could be expected to be like a digital piece. We're also dumping data, so we have it all stored with like application, and we're tagging it and housing it in a way that'll make it easy to kind of sort through and filter through as the document the uploads file gets larger. And I'm not sure. I think I have a few more comments in the chat I'll look at. Records categorized as stored, housed in logical places, steps, application data, and subsequent are. Yeah, and we're going to continue to look at like exactly where things are housed. You can see on this page, I kind of have it here and here. The housing of where this is, we can make sure that it's in a place that makes the most sense to how it's used in the field. It's easier to kind of move this page around. We're really focused on like what are the elements that we need to start developing for this page. Okay, I think I got through all of the questions in the chat. Any final questions or comments before we close out for today? All right, I know we had the landing page on the agenda. We did not get to it, so it'll be at top of agenda next week, and then we'll continue through finalizing the assessment work next week as well.
And do you want us to send you the policy like different? I know you were talking about earlier. I was just listening to everybody. I know we got policy and procedures as far as when people want to go into training and, the ifs and nots and stuff. And so you said you would like us to send you that. Is that we sending it to you, Olivia?
Yes, that is correct. I ask that you guys send me any of the resources you're using to kind of guide those training conversations. If there's anything you're using to like sign off on training too, like a formal review or things that are happening to sign off to make sure they're good to go to training. We would like to have that as well as anything you're using to guide the conversations about restrictions or like, is the job a good fit? Is the training a good fit? If you can send us that our way, that would be helpful. And then our ask to you all is I'm going to update this local training, this training assessment local view. We'll resend that out via email and post it on the resources page on our transition page. I ask that you all go in and take time to review and add comments for the overall definitions of what we're trying to accomplish on each of the pages.
And when you want this part back, the training assessment, I will be trying to put something together to show everything that we do from a policy standpoint and get it to you and stuff. So I get that to you before next Thursday.
Yeah, if I could have them by like end of day Tuesday so that I have Wednesday to review, and then if I have any questions, I can come Thursday prepared.
Awesome.
Any other questions or comments before we close out? All right, well, thank you all so much for your time today and for staying a little over. I really appreciate that and look forward to talking to you all more next week.
All right,
Thanks,
you
all.
take care. Goodbye, everybody.